Welcome to another Dietitian Talk. So this is where I'm a dietitian, Della is a dietitian. We have Laura, our wonderful dietitian who specializes in emotional release. We are talking today about what is integrative nutrition, what is plant-based integrative nutrition, how is that getting to the root of things, right? So we're really excited to be here. A formal introduction, my name is James Marin. I'm an integrative registered dietitian and the co-founder of Married to Health.
I'm Delia Marin. I'm an integrative dietitian, a certified gut nutritionist, and one of the co-founders of Married to Health.
And I'm Laura Sanchez. I'm an integrative registered dietitian, and I'm specializing in emotional release and gut stuff. Yeah.
Love it, because they are so connected. That gut-brain connection is so profound, so intertwined. So it is so amazing having Laura on our team. And we're less than half of the team at Married to Health. We have four more amazing dietitians: Damaris, Rachel, Vicky, Katie. They're seeing patients. They're doing their life's work right now.
They're
so
busy.
We're the ones who are here. We're excited today to chat with you guys. Laura's been expanding her knowledge. We're excited to hear about that and getting such great patient feedback, which we're super excited, because I think that the area of trauma being a root cause and emotions being a root cause is something we really just started appreciating in the last few years. And I think what you do is so special and so important, because I know for me as a gut health practitioner and somebody who specializes in IBS and dysbiosis and SIBO and, things like mast cell activation syndrome, histamine intolerance, the way that we feel and the way that our brain communicates to our gut and our gut communicates to our brain is so important. And you've had success with patients who have said, I have not had any relief with my SIBO until I started seeing you. And that was without you recommending a single herb, treatment, anything like that to manage their SIBO. So I'm so excited, Laura, to hear from you today, so we could really understand how much of a root that trauma and stress can be.
I wanna just highlight Laura's. I hope everyone can see that. This is her review, and it was great because I've seen Laura
see it
twice.
Before. It kind of
I've
warmed
seen
my
Laura
heart.
twice now for an emotional release, and to be honest, for my first appointment, I had no idea what to expect. I had been struggling with some anxiety and stress along with SIBO, which is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I figured this could be a good place to start. She asked me some background info on my life as a whole, and then we got to the good part. For an hour, maybe longer. I laid in my bed as she led me through a meditation to see if anything would come up. My first appointment felt life-changing. The whole time, I just felt this intense buzzing all over my body. Usually this is how I feel during a panic attack, which can feel very scary. But in retrospect, it was just all of this negative pent-up energy and trauma that's been stored in my body my whole life. I had the most intense release. Ever since then, I haven't really experienced any more of my SIBO symptoms, which is absolutely mind-blowing. It was incredible. If you even have an inkling that you should do this, just do it. It seriously felt life-changing. Thank you, Laura. I highlight that because that's probably one of the most amazing reviews I've seen just in general.
Yes.
But and I know emotional release is new, and now we're going to be taking any of our viewers' questions. I know we had some questions come in, and we're going to see if more come in. But what a great review. It speaks to what we're talking about today, is what is this integrative aspect of things, right? How are all these things connected and go together? But
How does that feel, Laura, for you to read these reviews? Because I know sometimes we're chugging along, we're learning our tools. And how does it feel for you to receive a review like that and know that this is the type of work you're doing?
Well, very gratifying. And it's one of those reminders that, oh, yes, you're in the path of helping and being on service. And that what I'm actually doing is helping, and that she's receiving it, and that her system, because I'm the guide, but she is allowing and being courageous to bring these really uncomfortable emotions to come up and be seen in a safe space for her body to do its own healing. So it's very beautiful to witness, and so intimate. And yes, she had mentioned it to me, and in when we had our session, And it was just such a surprise to see that she actually went and put the review in. Yeah, very nice, very beautiful. And this work keeps like, it's also keeps blowing my mind how powerful it can be when you work deep
Absolutely.
from the root.
And then to clarify, so really this can be broken down into three categories, right? There's the chemical, the physical, and the emotional. The emotional or the spiritual is its own category in of itself. And I know we do. I mean, we can talk about plant-based nutrition, great food and the nutrients you're eating, and we could talk about the right, that's the chemical, right? The chemicals. Food are chemicals. What are you putting in your body? What are you drinking? The physical. Have you been in an accident? Do you exercise in that physical aspect? But then so little and so few speak to the emotional and the spiritual, right? Which is really this underlying dimension to the other two, right? The physical and the chemical, which is, if you were traumatized at a young age, that's affecting you physically and chemically, right? If you do have this pent up, let's say, anger or frustration, or currently someone is making you angry and frustrated, or you're going through trauma, that is going to affect everything else. So it's amazing to kind of tie all that in, which speaks to the integrative nature of everything Laura does.
Yes. And Laura, we'd love to hear more from you since you're the expert in this avenue of what you've seen as far as root causes go, because we know it can be extremely powerful for the gut. So we'd love for you to expand on how trauma in the gut or emotions in the gut really are interconnected. And then what other avenues you've seen trauma lead into, whether that's emotional eating, which then causes body composition changes, or if you've seen it affect people's blood pressure or cholesterol or blood sugar. Or tell us a little bit more about trauma as a root cause, because we weren't planning on this really being the focus of the topic today, but it seems so appropriate, and it seems like more people need to know about this.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, this can happen at any time in our life, and trauma is also has been like used very lightly sometimes, like in conversations where you say, "Oh, I got traumatized by, I don't know, the movie today that I didn't see," like it's very lightly, and trauma has like, it can be like a big trauma or a small trauma, but it's like, it's not what happened to you, but the inner experience. So it's how you experience this really overwhelming situation. Like maybe your mom, when you were young, left you at the grocery store, and that for your system was so overwhelming that it just, because it was so overwhelming, your body couldn't handle it, and it just kind of like didn't let the emotion to accomplish its cycle or vibrate through your body, and so it just kind of contracts. And we have like something called fascia, which is like connective tissue that goes all over the body, and in its natural way, it's a very flexible connective tissue, and it's around all over. But when we have experienced like trauma in very overwhelming situations, these contracts, and like it holds the energy. It cannot come through you, so it holds the energy and it stores it in specific locations of your body. And so as it contracts, it hardens, and it creates like collagen fibers, which get like really hardened. And by doing these, then our tissues don't get enough supply of oxygen, nutrients, and yeah, it doesn't get what it needs, and it leaves it very susceptible to pathogens, foreigners, and susceptible to developing, disease. And so because it cannot reach the oxygen and the nutrients through the hardening of all of these fibers, then it's more prone to developing all of these chronic diseases that we see as a manifestation. And this happens over time, as we've seen.
That's so fascinating. And I don't think many people realize that just physiological response that our body has, and how emotions can get trapped, like you're saying, in the fascia when some of these traumas are occurring. I know that more people are talking about the nervous system, the vagus nerve nowadays, and we talk about the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic. And there are different types of sympathetic response: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, others. Would you say that you've noticed a typical pattern between some of those maybe types of responses, whether it's somebody who's more prone to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or any of the other types of sympathetic responses, who's more likely to have some of those emotions trapped in their fascia where they would benefit a little bit more from emotional release?
Yeah. So let me deconstruct this. This one is a big topic. So there's been like newer research. Steve Porges, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name well, but he talks about polyvagal theory. And basically he's explaining how we've evolutionary have evolved to, so we had like the parasympathetic and sympathetic. And so we had the mobilizing energy, which is the sympathetic. So we want to run from the threat. But an older version of that is the dorsal ventral, which is, so his theory has, we have the sympathetic and then the parasympathetic. And within the parasympathetic, there's two. There's the ventral and the dorsal. The dorsal is the older part that was developed like many years ago, where we go into almost like freeze. We just kind of play dead and just don't move. And then we evolved. As we evolved, we needed something like that gave us the energy to run away. So then we had the sympathetic, which is more of like a fight or flight. So then either you fight or you run away from threat. So that it was mobilizing your energy to run away from threat. And then the other aspect was safety, so social engagement, and that's the ventral. So he just argues how, imagine like a light, a traffic light. So we have the green light, the yellow, and the red. The green light is when we're like, when we feel safe. And by safe, it means you want to connect with people, you can connect to your environment, you can connect with nature and feel safe within you. Like you're fuzzy, you're calm, you're at peace, you're at ease. The yellow, the sympathetic one, now you're a little bit more activated, and you need these sometimes also. It's not necessarily a negative thing, because we need this to exercise. For example, we need to be in sympathetic to be able to move our muscles and run or all of these other things. But also if we're in threat and we really need to go away from maybe some creep, I don't know, or a bear or a lion, whatever it is. And then we have the red, which is when the body gets into more depression. That's when people is depressed, when they're numbed, they don't feel anymore, because that was the safest thing for their body. They just go into shutdown. Their bodies, that's a very smart mechanism, because it's just shutting down and saving energy only for the important things, which is your heart, your breathing, but the rest is shut down. So this happens a lot with people that is depressed. So they're more onto like the frozen state. And so it's just like a dance. And you can be throughout the day in any of these lights. So sometimes you may feel a little bit more like frozen for whatever reason. Trauma has a big like play in it. Or you can be feeling active and like more like ready to kind of go. Or at a point in your day, you might feel also connected and safe and supported. But what has happened is that as a society, I think we're stuck into the survival, into this between your yellow and red, where you're like stuck into these threat. Like your emotional body perceives certain things as threat. And the issue is not being able to come back to safety. So then we're stuck. And it's just a dance between I don't know how else maybe you can, if you have any questions, you can stop me, because I can just go.
I love that analogy that you gave. It makes it a lot easier to understand this very convoluted topic, right? Of like, what are our nervous systems doing throughout the entirety of the day? Because one phone call, one look from someone, one interaction can very well take you throughout that entire spectrum of that traffic light, if you will. And so I think that that's so interesting for people to really kind of stop and think of where they are for a lot of the day. Where are their emotions? How is their vagus nerve responding to some of these threats? And how did it come to become so dominant in whatever response they are showing or whatever response they are putting forth? So I love how you're helping people just really reconnect with themselves and really trace back how they got there and what events transpired for them to really reach that place, and how they're continuing to carry those events with them till this day, even though it may have happened decades ago. So I think that that's just so beautiful that you have that gift and that talent to be able to help people through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just
Yeah.
I want to express like symptoms, right? Like putting this into what people are feeling. Like if you're just
Mm.
feeling angry for no reason, if you feel like I just got to lose weight, if I just lose the 20 pounds, then I'll be happy, or then I'll be fulfilled, or then I'll be, so it's like this just never feeling fulfilled. And even if you lose the 20 pounds, you're maybe still unhappy and you gain 40 pounds back, right? If you're then feeling this anxiety that never goes away, and then you're getting constipated or bloated, or you're having diarrhea, and or you're constantly arguing with your spouse and you just don't know why. You can't even remember what the argument was about, and you're maybe experiencing migraines or hives on your body, and it's these ruts you find yourself in, right? Like it's like you don't know why. You're unconsciously going through these motions. And like I think you described it perfectly in the analogy. You're stuck between that red and yellow,
Mm.
and it never really feels green. Or if it does, it's just for an instant, and then you're back in that red and yellow limbo. And these are the manifestations of that, right? This constant anxiety or depression or anger and this back and forth.
Or
And
even more physiologically, that high
right.
blood pressure that doesn't respond to dietary changes, lifestyle changes, or that high blood sugar. We've all had those patients who have told us, my diet didn't change, but after this very traumatic life event,
Mm.
suddenly I had
Mhm.
diabetes, or suddenly I was diagnosed pre-diabetic. Suddenly my cholesterol shot up. So physiologically, I think so many people don't really connect with that and don't always put those
Mm.
instances together, and kind of just after experiencing this traumatic event, expect themselves to really just, all right, pull up your bootstraps and, change your whole entire lifestyle, and then are surprised a lot of times when they feel like, I don't get it. I went whole food plant-based. I cut out all salt, oil, sugar, and I'm, exercising every day. Why is my body still expressing this symptom? And sometimes it is that there is just these traumatic memories that are still kind of stuck, or these emotions that are still
Yeah.
stuck, that need to be loved
Yeah.
and purged out.
I think it's important also to like say, okay, the body has like, it's very simplistic in a way. So it's either safe or not safe.
Mm.
So until it reaches this homeostasis, which basically means that you're safe.
Mm.
You feel safe when there's homeostasis. When this doesn't happen, you're not safe. And when you're not safe, then there's fear. There's a fear response. And fear is translated into stress in the body. And the stress has a physiological response all over the body. It's like it's a cascade of events. It triggers it. So once stress is in the system, it will hit your adrenals, and the adrenals will like then flood our system with adrenaline and norepinephrine, and that then will travel into the whole body, and it will communicate to all of these organs to tell them, okay, we need higher heart rate. You need to constrict certain vessels so that we get more blood towards our limbs so we can run away or whatever. And yeah, everything is impacted with stress and threat. Some emotions, perhaps when you were younger, perhaps you weren't allowed to be angry for whatever reason, or you didn't have an example when you were growing up. And so now in your system, because it wasn't allowed or you didn't know how to do or express your anger, now anger is going to be perceived as threat, because at that point in your life, it wasn't safe to express this anger, and for you to fit into this environment and into your parents and into this home, you had to adapt. And the system remembers this, and it will tell the system, okay, it's not safe to be angry, because this is what's going to happen. We're going to be rejected, and we're not going to be part of the tribe. So then now, many years later, you grow up, but every time you're triggered to be angry, there's like this trigger. It's a manifestation that this anger was never allowed, or it's a perceived threat from the system. And this will cause the stress response in your body, physiologically, unconsciously, because it's a perceived threat by the system. And so then all of these cascade of things happen again. And then so it's constantly happening subconsciously.
And I just want to add what that does to the depletion of your nutrients in your body, right? Because let's then add to that a standard American diet, where maybe you're already lacking in the correct minerals and vitamins. Maybe you're already depleted in your vitamin D. Maybe you're already experiencing dysbiosis, so you already lack that homeostasis. You have dysbiosis in your gut microbiome. You're not already absorbing your nutrients properly. You're having, I mean, I can continue going, right? You have all these symptoms. And now you're going through these emotional ups and downs, and your adrenal glands are pumping and your nervous system's going, and you're doing this as opposed to a more just balanced ebb and flow and like a homeostasis. And this is taxing. You're using zinc, you're using vitamin C, you're using your iodine to regulate your thyroid. You're using so much of your nutrients.
Insulin,
hormones, neurotransmitters. I mean, we can go on and on, because you're in this roller coaster. It's energy, and you're depleting yourself emotionally and mentally, but that then translates to physically and nutritionally, right? So it's a massive effect. It's a massive, like, it can't be.
And I like how you mentioned this part also, because now add to that our environment, and now how we've been so disconnected to our nature, or how we used to grow foods before, or how we treat our animals. So we're also consuming, in a way, stressed animals, if we're consuming animals from, sources that we're not aware of, for example. And this stress plus this other stress plus this other stress is just like a sandwich of stress, and then we wonder why we're feeling the way we're feeling.
Wow. So
I think
powerful.
it's just like this manifestation of events of a system that perhaps is not working for as this humanity, or to be human,
right?
And
I want to go on that. I want to go on that animal picture really quickly, because so many wonder, like, why are you guys plant-based? Like, I know Dahlia and I have been plant-based going on 13 years, which is crazy. But we're not like anti-animals or like anti-people who eat animals or anything like that. But it's questioning that. It's putting that paradigm into place and going like, what's the food of your food, right? Like, if you're eating animals, right? What is the food of your food? Meaning, what is that animal eating? And even further, like, you're posing that question, Laura, like, what is that animal experiencing, right? Is that animal happy? Does that animal have cancer cells? Is that animal extremely stressed and their body's flooded with stress hormones and neurotransmitters? Like, all you have to do, I know for us, an area we grew up in is right here by Chino, which they're known for their massive dairy farms and just CAFOs, right? Concentrated animal feeding operations. And you can pass by there, and it's in an industrial area. So you would guess, I mean, and it's right off busy highways. So they're breathing exhaust. I would probably assume their water isn't filtered, so they're getting contamination in their water. I would assume their feed is conventional, so it's full of genetically modified ingredients and contaminants. We've looked at this. We've seen the studies where they're allowed to eat plastic. They're allowed to eat waste of other animals. They're allowed to eat waste and rotten food goods, even with the wrappers still on, which hence why we've okayed laws and policies to go, oh yeah, it's okay if they eat plastic. So our animals are eating plastic in a toxic environment. They're eating toxic things. Do you think they're happy and being treated well? And then you're eating this. So it's like, what's that? That's a massive disconnect, right? Of going like, man, I want to eat well and eat things that make me feel good, but yet we're not. What were you going to say?
Yeah, and this also happens with plants, by the way.
Yeah.
When the plants have been like monocropped or whatever you say.
Right.
And so they like the nutrients, they're herbicides, pesticides, so that because they like the biodiversity of growing with other plants, because they have intricate communications as well as a being, as an organism. And so it can go both ways. And I just think it's challenging at times. And that's why it's just important to know that all of these can be adding to the stress load. And we don't have to go crazy about like, oh my gosh, now I can eat anything. And now I have to deal with my emotions and all of this stress now from all of that, right?
Yeah.
So then it's going to harm us in a way. But just like if we can work on one layer. So, okay, well, I know this is happening with the fruits and the plants. Maybe perhaps I'm going to see if I can invest in maybe quality of plants and maybe quality of animals from a place that perhaps have a different view of how they are connecting with these animals and plants.
Right.
Or if that's not in your budget and if that's not something that you can do, then maybe you can work on your emotions and invest in that. So just prioritizing, I think, and just working one layer at a time so that we don't go crazy. But it's just crazy how much
there
we can add up.
So many layers to it. And I think that you bring up a good point, Laura, because we live in a society who's very outer layer focused, the symptoms, right? If we're talking about the root cause today, let's use an analogy of a tree. You're talking about the roots of this tree. Well, most of our system, especially here in the United States, they focus on the leaves and the branches. And we're integrative, right? So we integrate both parts of that. Where would you say you guide people? And I know that we're all very mindful about this, of when they're needing to really incorporate and integrate some of that branch and leaf care, right? And focus on some of the symptoms. Because sometimes you need to take care of the symptoms to even identify where the roots are. Sometimes that tree or that bush is so overgrown. There's so many symptoms surrounding it. You can't even identify where the root system is. Where would you say you kind of help people identify, okay, you're at a point where we should now start working on the roots? Or, you know what, I don't think we should start working on the roots yet. You have so many branches and limbs and leaves to really trim down before we can get to that root. Tell me your process. Yeah. Of like, how do you, how do you
so in my landscaping business, so I think it's important what you're just bringing up now, because yes, sometimes you just need to manage the symptoms so that you can get into a place of, okay, now I can think better because not my own emotions were just too much. But I think it's not about, I think it's just asking the question, well, what's my plan? How long am I going to be on this protocol or on this plan? And if I've been trying and I've been experiencing these symptoms over and over and over for many years, then it's just stopping and asking the question like, so is this really helping me? Because clearly I've tried the nutrition, I've went to the doctor, I went to the dietitian, I did meditation, I did yoga, but nothing is helping me. So then it's just like, okay, well, I guess you get to a point where maybe we need to get into the roots. And vice versa. I think that even if you have a big bush, you can still very slowly work on the roots while you're working on your branches and cutting down and just like relieving symptoms. I think it's not either or. I think it's a combination, and I think it's just, again, it's bringing it back to the person that is in front of me. Like, how does this person feel in her body? Like, what does she need in this moment? Because at the end, yes, I'm the expert, and perhaps I've been studying this for longer, but she's the expert of her body, and I want the person that I'm treating in front of me to have this power back.
Yes.
That you are the expert of your body. You and only you can feel what you're feeling and your internal experience in this world, in this inner garden that you have. So it's just like, just asking the question of like, what do you need in this moment? If in this moment you just need to get to a place of stability of like, okay, I just need to get my mind right, get the medication that you need. And that's what integrative means. It's not either or. It's like, okay, let's just have this dance of like, okay, you need medicine, you need drugs. Okay, no problem. While you do that, let's work on this as well. Let's see if we can work on breathing and see like if you can find some stillness even for a minute while you take your medicine. And then talk to your physician to see, okay, what's my plan? How am I going to wean off these? Because I don't want to do this forever. What's the plan? So that's how I would approach it.
So beautifully said. And I think if more providers were a little bit more self-aware and I think thinking a little bit more integratively, they could have that humility to understand, okay, I've done all that I can. And now I think that we need to integrate someone else into the team. And I think I love that our team really thinks that way, because I know I've been in that situation. I have patients where I'm like, look, man, I've pulled out all the stops. We've really tried everything. We need to bring someone else into the care team, whether that's Laura, and I can truly identify this person really needs some emotional release. I can tell that they are probably never going to reach SIBO remission when they have not addressed these emotions. And sometimes it is a doctor. I've had other patients where I'm like, I'm suspicious you might have colon cancer. So let's not, yes, let's work on your emotions, and yes, let's optimize fiber intake. But if you need a colonoscopy, you need a colonoscopy. None of these things are going to remove a cancerous polyp from your colon. So I think it's so important for more practitioners to just have that self-awareness to know, I need another member on the team, whether that is somebody who is using more kind of allopathic Western therapies and then says, let's bring in a dietitian, let's bring in someone for emotional release, or a therapist, or let's bring in a pelvic floor therapist, or someone who can help with that other aspect of things. And even us who do work more integratively and you could consider it, I guess, in certain ways more holistically. It's just having that wherewithal and that humility. And I think that self-awareness to really understand what someone's root could possibly be. So I love your approach to that, Laura. And I love what you said, because I always tell James that I always say, I'm not an or type of person. I'm an and. So I love what you said. You can work on both. You can work on the root at the same time that you work on the leaves or the branches. Or if you're maybe not an and type of person, or you're an or, then having the right members of your care team can help you decide, okay, let's start here at the branches and then we'll work our way down to the roots. Or you know what, let's tackle the roots and then the branches will work themselves out, as long as we're kind of working on the roots. So I think that what you do is so powerful, Laura, and we're just excited to have you on board. And we have some
and what
questions.
you do too. Because what you empower your patients to also take responsibility of, okay, how do you feel? Okay, like you're including the patient as well. You're not just telling them what to do and use your authority as a dietitian to tell them, okay, this is what we're doing. Yes, sometimes we need that, but also involving the person so that they slowly get into more self-awareness, I think.
And
I think this ties very well
yes,
into the question that someone asked.
And we do have a good question. And it's funny because we were just talking about this in actually another group that we're currently part of. We were talking about healthcare trauma and how, we as healthcare practitioners, we work for our patients, and it's not the other way around. I feel like so many patients have been intimidated and bullied and gaslit for such a long time by their healthcare team. They feel hopeless and powerless. They forget their power in the team. They are the leader of the team. It is their health. It is their body. Even if it's in a system like an HMO where you're kind of assigned different people, you can still advocate for yourself. Even within a system like that, request another provider, request a second opinion. I always remind my patients, we work for you. If it's not working, speak up and tell your team, hey guys, this project is not going the way that I thought it would go. I had this plan. I was expecting you to take me there. I'm putting in my work because, right, the leader always needs to put in their own work. But I don't feel supported by you guys. And you know what, I put you in charge of this project and you're not getting it done. I'm sorry, you're fired. Or I'm going to go consult with someone else and see what they can offer in the team. So I think healthcare trauma is also such an important area to address. And I'm sure one that you see a lot. I see it a lot. And it ends up bringing people to a stuck place because sometimes they have such healthcare trauma. They feel comfortable with me, and then they don't want to speak to their physician. They don't want to speak to another practitioner because they felt unsupported by others. So I think that, speaking of root causes,
and it can be scary
when you bring it up. Yeah.
And also, like, this all kind of intertwines, sorry to cut everyone off, with our own maybe childhood trauma. So like the authority talking us down, perhaps this was one of our stories when we were growing up. So then we just go into shut down, and we just have a hard time like expressing and stepping into our voice, into like, hey, this is not working for me. So yeah, it all comes back to working into your like relationship. Can you say hello? Yeah.
So cute.
To the puppy in the back.
But yeah, it is. It's interesting. Yeah. And I usually will ask those questions. I hear you making these statements about providers or doctors or whoever it is. Where do you think those beliefs became created in your mind? How did your caregivers speak about healthcare practitioners when you were growing up? I continue to hear you say it's a waste of money. It's a waste of my time. They don't even understand me. They don't listen to me. How were you raised with kind of your beliefs about the healthcare system? And a lot of times it's an inherited belief, or they picked up this trauma for a very warranted reason along the way. So I love that you bring in just so much compassion to your care, and everyone on our team really does, because it's so important to us. And we have such a great question just going along with this topic, and just this topic of root causes, and we're bringing trauma and emotions into it. Someone's asking, what therapies or strategies do you use for emotional release with people to feel more in this green light state and to better deal with threats? Ooh, give us your insights, Laura.
So I use a lot breath, but a different type of breath is more like a releasing breath. I like combine it, is the releasing breath and also like maybe a more like slow breath, or maybe a more activated breath. And I also use verbal guidance, so like meditation, music, and emotional release in itself. It's just like a combination of all of that. So it's basically I'm using the breath, verbal guidance, and just resourcing, which is kind of like giving yourself a positive, like maybe a positive touch, or your mother hand into your heart, or maybe it's you giving yourself a hug, or maybe it all comes back to self-awareness, cultivating a self-awareness practice. I think that's what I've noticed the most helpful and successful to helping people feel more into this green light state. Because the more aware we are of our sensations and what's happening in our inner awareness, the better we're able to hold and witness like all that is going through us. And eventually, with time and practice, you're noticing all of these sensations and emotions and feelings, and you can actually give them the space to be felt instead of just dealt with logic and analyzing and just very mental about it. We want to feel them with the body, allow them with the body, while you give yourself like, positive touch and breath. I don't know if this answers the question.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I love this.
Those techniques, and yeah, it is. I mean, I could speak from personal experience of just being so in your head and logical and refusing, or not, I guess overall just not appreciating the value in feeling emotions. You're trying to fix, not feel, right? You're trying to logically go, oh, XYZ, 1 + 2 or
You're
one
almost
plus
gaslighting yourself.
1 = 2, huh?
It's almost
Yeah.
gaslighting yourself.
Yeah, and you're going, oh, if I just feel and use, and again, like the techniques you said, helps you kind of move from here to here and like feel and go through it and really take that time to unearth and dig up those emotions that you've buried away because you didn't want to feel. Maybe you weren't ready to feel. And it is accepting that, okay, now I'm ready. Let's start to feel.
Or you didn't have a safe space to feel before, or whatever the reasons. We all adapt the way we need to adapt. So I think just continues to affirm how just important it is. And I think for a long time, right, it was stigmatized to feel and to stop and take up that space and to use your time on addressing those emotions. And we're in such an interesting time, I would say, in the world where now there are more who are appreciating just some of these more somatic therapies and these more introspective types of therapies combined with others, because I think as a dietitian, you bring an interesting perspective. I think it enables us also to kind of understand a little bit more of just the psychology behind why, psychology behind emotional eating, psychology behind, some of those other symptoms that the body is expressing. So I think that I love this topic. I love every time that we get just the one-on-one time with Laura, because I'm so fascinated by what you do. I share patience with Laura, and I know that what Laura does is so important. I've had a session with Laura, and it was just so beautiful, so insightful, so special. And so I love that we're talking about this topic today. And I think, like we said, we didn't plan for it to, be this way, but it perfectly integrated. This is integrative plant-based nutrition. And, I think it's not all just saying like, oh, plant-based nutrition is just eating plants and integrating these herbs. There's so much more to it, because I think when we're not opening up space for this type of conversation, it furthers people's trauma, because they think, well, I'm eating and I'm, behaving in a perfect way for in a plant-based diet, but I'm not finding that success that I thought I would. There must be something wrong with me, right? Because people are only talking about how perfect plant-based nutrition is, or people are only talking about how perfect herbs can be, or some of these other modalities, and it's not getting me there. So there must be something wrong with me. Not stopping to think, well, that's only one aspect. That's only one part of the picture. There needs to be a lot more to it.
Yeah. And usually you can trace it back to your childhood also many times. It's like
authenticity. When the child feels threatened or that it cannot hold when, the caregiver, whatever is happening in that moment, it will give up its authenticity in order to keep its attachment, because it's more important for this child in a survival thinking to be attached and maintain this bond with the caregiver than to be speaking up for himself. And so many times what the child will do is take the blame, and it's easier for the child to say it's my fault and not my caregiver's fault because of survival. It's like he won't survive. The child won't survive if the caregiver doesn't take care of the child. So it will give up its authenticity, its voice, its expression, in order to maintain this attachment with the caregiver and make sure that it can continue with the survival. So it's pretty smart what the body does.
It's amazing. As parents, we've seen that. We've seen that happen. And, we have the awareness to notice when it's happening. Like maybe I'm in a mood and I notice Layla's trying to accommodate my mood and trying to cater to me, when that's not your job. And I'll remind her of that. That's, why are you feeling this? I'll ask her, do you feel like you need to do this for me? It's not your job. I appreciate that you're loving me, but it's so important that you love yourself first and foremost as well, and not give up your safety and your security and what your body needs in order to give to someone else. So it's so natural. And you see how it can happen with maybe parents who don't have self-awareness or don't have the capacity to make space for their kids because they haven't very likely dealt with their own traumas. But I feel like it's so instinctive for us as children to do that. And that's such a great explanation that you give. It's because they recognize, hey, I need these people. I need to be fed and washed and, driven around. I need them to be okay so I can be okay. But at the end of the day, if that compounds on itself day after day, month after month, year after year, are you actually okay? Physically, you're still alive, but how are you emotionally and mentally and spiritually?
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
We have
And then
another great question.
Let's see. Hi, I was wondering if you use YouTube videos to help with emotional release and if there's anyone you'd recommend. But if you don't use YouTube, do you use any meditation apps?
I'd recommend Laura. But Laura, what are some of your favorite resources?
Our recommendation is Laura.
So yeah, I don't do YouTube videos for emotional release, and I don't know of a practitioner that does it yet. But meditation apps, yeah, I mean, Insight Timer has like nice meditations to kind of like find stillness, calm. The Tap solution also offers kind of like a really nice way of like getting into your body and like feeling like touching into the peace and the calm of your body. What do you guys have any other? I'm like blanking.
I'd love to know, Laura, the difference for you to explain this to people, difference between some of those meditation apps and then some of the gut-based hypnotherapy. So the gut-directed hypnotherapy apps. Like I'll recommend things like Nerva, or I'll recommend some of those other gut-directed hypnotherapy apps that are available out there, like Happy Inside, Regulora. And I know there's very much a difference between hypnotherapy and meditation, but how would you say those differ significantly? And if you feel like there's a place for both of them, maybe.
I think there is a place for both of them. I think meditation is like guiding you through like a journey. Like I think many times meditations will, walk you through like a breath and like allow you, like they log you in to your own body from the external world into your internal world. And then you're just following their guidance, because there's meditations that have verbal guidance and there's meditations that is just sound. So then you just kind of get lost into the sound and then you just come back into your breath. Or this is, I think, a good point to say that meditation is not about being blanked or having a happy state. Meditation is about holding yourself with everything, allowing yourself to think all the thoughts, to allow all the images, to allow, like, you don't have to change anything of the moment. You just have to see it as an observer and instead of interacting or judging it. So I think that's the difference. And with hypnotherapy, I think they go more deeply into, like they will use a little bit more advanced techniques, I think. So they might use like, well, now you're into the gut. So then you're specializing in this area of your body. And then they maybe will take you into a journey of like, well, how would you convert your gut if it could be a symbol or a part of you that is like in front of you and now is talking to you? What would this part tell you? Or what does this part need from you? And then as these questions are being asked and maybe you have an answer, and then it keeps you it's another type of journey. I think more like it uses more advanced techniques than just a meditation that is just like maybe using breath, music, and I think the main goal of a meditation, perhaps, but there's so many types of meditations I can go into, like this could be another hour. But I think that the whole point of meditation is to get you into a place of peace and calm. And I think many times people struggle to find these because there's so much resistance of, I'm thinking about my to-do list. I'm thinking about my boss. I'm thinking about my mom. I'm thinking about the next thing that I need to do. And I think it's the resistance of what's coming in the moment instead of like allowing it to be there from this observer's view, from I don't have to do anything, I'm just observing. And it's kind of like clouds. They're just going through your awareness and they leave. Just like as you feel sad, you may feel sad, but it doesn't last forever. It goes away. And then joy can come. Maybe anger will come. They're not stagnant. And I think this is what happens with meditation. You're just still. And so it allows whatever it's present into your consciousness to be in your awareness. And then you just observe it without judgment and just let it go. And then another thing will come, and then you just observe. Like, hey, I see you, and that's it.
I'm holding that space. I feel like you addressed something so important that I've heard that from so many people. I used to say that as well. Oh, I can't meditate. I can't turn my brain off. But how frequently are we stopping and giving that time and space for us to think about, even like you said, kind of allowing those thoughts to pass by about your mother or about your boss or about your to-do list. Okay, you thought about it, you gave some space for it, and now you're allowing more time and space for some of those things that were underneath, some of those more superficial thoughts. I think we live in a society that's so distracted and we constantly have input. We don't often have time to offload, and meditation gives you that time and space. And if it's uncomfortable at first, it's telling you that you need a little bit, maybe more of it, because you haven't been creating enough space for it to become something that maybe is a little bit more comfortable or relieving or restful for you.
And I think it's like also it's a good analogy of like imagine an inbox of messages, and that you haven't, let's say you went off for your trip in Egypt, for example, and you said, okay, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks and I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to look at my inbox, nothing. And then you come back and then you see your inbox and it's like 1,000 messages. That's what happens.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. It's exactly what happens when we don't give ourselves the permission and the space to be in stillness, to check in with ourselves often. So things accumulate like these messages. And then when you give yourself the time, then you have like a very overwhelming inbox of 1,000 thoughts. And then you get overwhelmed. And that's okay. It's like, okay, I can only hold it for maybe 15 seconds. 15 seconds. Okay, I open the inbox. It's 1,000. This is enough. Okay, I'm coming back. But then every day, just adding a little bit more so that your capacity gets bigger. And then you can slowly unfold the inbox and read the messages.
I love a good analogy. That's a good analogy for sure. Check your inbox regularly so you're not so overwhelmed.
Yes, that emotional inbox is so important. Such an important route. I'm so glad we had the time today to really delve deeper into this, because I don't think enough people are. So I'm so grateful, as always, that Laura's on our team. Laura's always educating us, just making us more aware, giving us more vocabulary to speak on these topics and just more knowledge of it. And we love what you do. We know your patients love what you do. And you're just always adding more tools to your toolbox as well. You just got back from another training and you're just continuing to use these modalities. What was the latest training that you did?
So this one was on spinal attunement. It's the method, which basically works on the spinal energetics. So, we have the physical part of the spinal cord, but it also has all of these nerves, and it also has all of these electric, energetic fields. So it's working with the energy and the chakra system and meridians, things that we cannot see, but we can feel in the magnetic field in a way. So yeah,
Beautiful.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of great research coming out on the biofield that kind of, I think, is under the umbrella of like biofield energy, where we are these biological and energetic beings where we give off biological signatures. I mean, that's why we have a heartbeat. We can test electromagnetic signals in our body, right? We have a pulse, and we use machinery to test so much of our body. This area of the biofield is so interesting and fascinating, how that works with and interplays with our health. So very cool.
When you do grounding, for example, as well, you can measure that.
Yeah.
You can measure the electromagnetic field of the earth when you ground, when you're barefoot. You can actually measure that. Or even with mushrooms. I don't know if you ever seen a video of mushrooms giving like sound,
Yeah.
which is
Amazing.
kind of like, whoa.
It
And
is.
just think about it. We live in this universe and it's just like there's quantum fields really, and all of this
Yeah.
energy is being pushed. And just because we cannot see it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. And
Right.
sometimes it's in the silence where we find most of the information, and we can connect to nature and the trees and all of these beings. But yeah,
Wow.
it's
And
a little
I think that it could sound like that, but I think there's so much of a spiritual aspect to it. Because I would say maybe people who are a little bit more spiritual might be a little bit hesitant with modalities of this type, and they are one and the same. I think you can't really separate them. You have to understand the energies to understand the spiritual, or understand the physical, understand the emotional. So we could talk for hours about this. Somebody said, I'm obsessed with this convo. I am as well. I'm always just obsessed when we talk to Laura. If you guys like this topic, if you have more questions about emotional release and how that relates to trauma, how that relates to root causes, since that was our topic today of what is integrative. I'm sure you guys did not expect to hear that, right? You expected us to kind of give you a straight shot, but this is integrative. This is root cause nutrition. So if you really enjoy topics like this, let us know. Let us know if you want to hear more from Laura, learn more about Laura. We're very excited. We're relaunching. I know you guys have been like, you've been talking about this course forever, but it's here, it's coming. We're relaunching our course, and Laura is going to be part of it, because I cannot talk about SIBO and IBS without involving Laura. Emotions, trauma, stress, that sympathetic, parasympathetic, it is SIBO, right? And so we're so excited that Laura is going to be part of the course. So that's a place you can find Laura. You can find Laura at marriedtohealth.com. We have some blogs written by Laura that we're going to continue to include. Laura, where else can people find you if they want to learn more about what you do and learn more about just emotional release?
So you can find me at Married to Health, like you just mentioned. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm active over there, and on Instagram as the Emotional RD.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, everybody. This was another Dietitian Talk,
Yes,
and this is our once-a-month Dietitian Talk. Stay tuned. We also do a Good Gut Live, and that is also for our members as well as the general public. So stay tuned for that coming up. Make sure you subscribe, comment, let us know what topics you want to hear about down below. If you're watching this later on, welcome. Hi. And again, have a happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And remember to heal with each meal. And Dahlia likes to say,
I like to say feel with each meal as well, because you can't have one without the other.
all right.
Yes.
Bye, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.